Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alan Joins, Mayor of Winston-Salem, and I'm delighted to be here today, joined by Councilmember Dan Bessie from the Southwest Ward and Councilmember John Larson from the South Ward. And I want to certainly personally thank Councilmember Bessie for bringing forth this idea of a day of remembrance for the sanitation workers in Memphis who were killed on February the 1st, 1968, in an accident there that brought attention to the whole issue of workplace safety, working conditions by the sanitation workers. And as we know, Dr. Martin Luther King took up that cause as those workers then went out on strike. And just in 2 months later, Dr. King was assassinated there in Memphis. Before I do the proclamation, I'm going to ask Councilmember Bessie to make a few comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a fitting day, I think, to remember the Memphis sanitation workers who were killed 50 years ago today, not only because it's an anniversary, but because today we recognize February as Black History Month. And too often, the younger folks who were not alive at the time of the struggles in the 1960s may not understand the full breadth and depth of what was going on. It wasn't just the Voting Rights Act, but it was also work for workplace justice and economic justice and opportunity for everyone. People remember the great "I Have a Dream" speech that Dr. King gave. They don't always remember where he was and what he was working on when he was struck down by an assassin's bullet in 1968. He was in Memphis. He was there to support the sanitation workers who were trying to get the unsafe working conditions addressed that at 4:20 in the afternoon on February 1st, 1968, resulted in the deaths of two men, sanitation workers, Echo Cole and Robert Walker. They were trying to shelter from a storm in the back side of their truck in a condition that sanitation workers in Memphis had warned the city about before. A malfunctioning truck suddenly cranked up. They couldn't get out. They were crushed to death. It was just a few days later that Memphis sanitation workers met and decided that this had to end. And 700 of the 1,300 Memphis sanitation workers went out on strike for safer work conditions and fair wages, and it was to support them in their quest for workplace safety and economic justice that Dr. King was in Memphis just 2 months later. So for the folks who are younger than us, and which is most of America today, and don't remember personally the events of the time, or perhaps are not as familiar as we all need to be with what was really going on then and the struggles that continue today for fair pay and safe working conditions. It's important to remember this. And so cities and towns around America today are joining in this kind of proclamation that the mayor has put together and will read. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bessie. Mr. Larson, would you like to say a word?
One word. It's sometimes hard for us to understand what's happening when we're close to a death. We've seen that recently in America. We pull back 50 years in perspective to see what happened in Memphis with the sanitation workers, and we can realize the changes that would occur because of these two individuals who forced the community to look at a problem within their system, within their economy, within their job hiring, within their workplace safety. And their lives changed the world. And at the time, it was difficult for anybody maybe to appreciate that, but today, as we look back in city government and our responsibility for workplace safety, equality, and equal opportunities, we know that that has made a difference. And I think that's the legacy that Mr. Cole and Mr. Walker leave us.
Thank you, Councilmember Larson, Councilmember Bessie. Certainly, as I understand it, and looking at some media reports, there are 30 or more cities around the country today that are doing a similar honor, and I'm glad we're one of those. So, Mr. Bessie, thank you for bringing this concept forward there. So I'll propose the proclamation. Whereas on February 1st, 1968, two sanitation workers, Echo Cole and Robert Walker in Memphis, Tennessee, were crushed to death in a malfunctioning garbage truck. And whereas their deaths sparked the walkout of 1,300 fellow sanitation workers And whereas 2 months later, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was in Memphis to support the striking workers when he was gunned down by an assassin's bullet. And whereas Americans nationwide celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. King in many ways, but far too many remember that he was campaigning for economic justice when he lost his life. And whereas there is today a national effort to honor the sacrifices of Ethel Cole, Robert Walker, Dr. King, and all the others who have sacrificed for the workplace safety, for fair employment practices, and economic opportunity and justice in our community. Now, therefore, I, Alan Joines, Mayor of the City of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim Thursday, February 1st, 2018, as a day of remembrance for the Memphis Sanitation workers. And I urge citizens and residents of Winston-Salem to participate in a national minute of reflection today at 4:20 p.m. in memory of the workers who lost their lives in that tragic workplace accident 50 years ago, and in honor of their efforts for workplace safety, fair employment practices, and economic justice that their sacrifice helped to inspire. And I signed it today, the first day of February 2018. Thank you.